Welcome again to the S.E.M podcast. Jack and Zach are here again today, and we are joined by the famous Joel Turvey. Joel, it's good to have you. What part of the world are you calling in from today?
So I live in a tiny town called Evesham. It's about 30,000 people. The closest place anyone would probably know is Stratford-on-Avon. So it's about 14 miles from Stratford-on-Avon, west of Stratford. So
Okay,
near Shakespeare's birthplace.
very nice. That's awesome. Well, we appreciate you coming on, and we're looking forward to catching up with regards to the mission. Have you listened to any of our podcasts previous to this?
Yeah, I've listened to a few. I listened to Sister Bond because we were in the same MTC group, although she didn't remember. And then I listened to Elder Thomas the other week, who was also in the same MTC group as me. So
Oh, nice.
I've dipped into a few others, but not necessarily listened to them all.
Cool. Well, good. Well, then you are pretty familiar with our format. We talk about, your pre-mission and how you ended up on a mission in Scotland. Then we'll jump over the mission and talk about life since you've been home. And then we'll go back through the mission and reminisce. So I'll give the time to you.
Sounds good. Well, so before mission, I'm the youngest of 5 boys, and my brothers had all stopped going to church in their later teen years. And I kind of thought I'd follow suit and do the same thing as they all had done. So I always thought I'd just go to university, which I did. So I finished college at 18, which you do in the UK, and went to university for a year. I carried on going to church, although I kind of didn't plan to for some reason. I kind of thought I wouldn't, but I ended up going anyway. And then sort of 6 or 7 months into my first year at university, I started thinking about things a bit more. As a missionary actually came back from Scotland. So Elder Castle, who had served before me, came back from Scotland, and we started doing quite a lot of mountain biking together. And that's one of the things that kind of got me thinking a bit more about it. So yeah, I kind of went to see my bishop, had a chat with him, and then 5 months later, I was called to Scotland and out on my mission. There was pretty much everyone in my ward was called to Scotland. So there's about
Is that right?
In my generation, there was about 8 missionaries that went to Scotland from either my ward or the wards next to us. So quite a big group of us.
Interesting.
We had Elder Taylor, Mark Taylor, Ewan Castle, Mark Baines, Bettridge. Craig Bettridge. He served just after me.
Okay, yeah, he was in my group.
Yeah, he was just he's in the ward next to us. So I was pretty good friend. I'm still pretty good friends with him.
Nice.
So yeah,
that's awesome. Well, good. Well, and timeline-wise.
Yeah.
Timeline-wise, so you were in Sister Bond's group. So, when were you in the MTC?
September 2002. I went into the MTC. That was Elder Slater. So Greg Slater was there as well. Sean Thomas, Elder Lehman.
Yeah,
I think
he's been on.
Well. Yeah, Elder Lehman was in there. Sister Bond. There was 5 of us. I think that's 5 of us came to Scotland in the MTC group. I think that might have been everyone.
Okay.
I've probably missed someone. I hope I haven't.
Well, we'll figure it out along the way. So you went into the MPC September of 2002 and home September of 04 then?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. What have you been up to since September of 04?
So I came back in September, went straight to university. So I actually left the mission a week early because my university course started before. I was meant to finish on the 22nd of September. So I went home on the 15th. So it meant I didn't get to do the usual sign-off with the other missionaries in the MTC group, which was a shame. But it meant, on the nice side of it was my parents came up to Scotland, and President Vriens walked up with me on my own and my parents.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is quite cool, but I would have liked to have seen that the last week. But so I literally came home on the 15th, and I think I started university on the 17th or something, 2 days later, straight into Freshers Week, which is a bit of an interesting scenario to be thrown in 2 days after your mission.
Yeah, no kidding.
But it was fun. So yeah, I did my. It's interesting around that actually, because I had to apply for my mission for university while I was on my mission, and I'd always wanted to design boats and be in the Navy or something like that. And I talked to President Vriens about this a few times. I was like, I want to build boats, I want to design boats, and be in some kind of engineer. And President Vriens was like, no, you shouldn't be an engineer. That's not what you're meant to do. He's like, you should be a teacher.
Really?
Yeah. So anyway, I changed course kind of last minute and ended up doing my degree in history. And then after that I did my teacher training. So and then so I've been a teacher ever since, working in primary schools in the UK ever since I came back from a mission, pretty much. And so for the last 5 years, I've been a head teacher of a small school the other side of Worcester.
Nice.
So it's really, yeah, I like it. I like working in schools because one of the nice sides of it is the Church of England school. So you get to do, it's very much driven by a vision, which is based on the Bible and kind of Jesus' teachings, which is really nice grounding for a company or any organization to have. And so it's quite nice kind of getting to talk to the kids about spiritual things. We have this big display on the entrance to the school that's all about spiritual capacities and how we try and develop spirituality in the kids in the school. So kind of dealing with the big problems in life, asking big questions, questioning logic and thinking outside the box, and trying to be open to awe and wonder and those kind of things. So we talk about that a lot with them, which I really find brings good feelings.
Yeah.
Life, getting to do that on a daily basis. So
that's wonderful. Very cool.
So yeah, then so I got married about it was my wedding anniversary on Friday, actually. So we're married 16 years on Friday.
Oh, nice. Congratulations.
Which is good. So married in July, 21st of July, 2007. For those that live in the UK, you'll be able to remember that day because it was the day of the big floods in the UK.
Really?
The records for flooding were broken in England.
So it was a rainy day when you got married?
Yeah, I was about half an hour late for my own wedding, which is never a good start. But to be fair, it's an hour drive and it took me like 4.5 hours to get to my own wedding. So I'd left him plenty of time. It's just the nature of the beast, I suppose.
Wow, that's crazy.
So yeah, I've been married 16 years. So we've got 4 children. So my oldest daughter's 11. So we waited a bit of time before we had kids. Did a bit of traveling in that time as well. So we visited, got out to Israel, India. We traveled right across Europe by car. We drove to Slovenia from the UK, which was a really good trip for a month. It's one of the advantages, I suppose, of working in education. You get the whole summer holidays off.
Yeah, that's true.
So, been able to do quite a bit of traveling before we had children. And then not so much since we had kids, though. But yeah, I did a couple of trips out to the States as well after my mission.
Nice.
I really enjoyed. Yeah, I went to stay with Elder Dunn in Salt Lake.
Oh yeah.
About a year after I went home, and then I went up to. I thought it'd be a great idea to drive to Edmonton because it's like just a few states away to see Arthur Bhutan. It was the weekend of the mission reunion. So there was President Vriens' mission reunion, and I was like, I'll just rent a car and drive up to see Arthur Bhutan in Edmonton, stay for a couple of days, and then drive back down for the mission reunion, thinking it was kind of like the UK where you can just drive and it's close by. So yeah,
not quite.
Yeah, 20-hour drive I think it was on my own.
Oh my goodness,
which was fun. Yeah, so interestingly, actually, when I was in Edmonton with Arthur Bhutan, it was his first date with his now wife, Jocelyn.
Oh really?
Yeah, we went on a double date together, and it just so happened that it was this girl that he just met, Jocelyn. I don't know what her name was at the time, but now Bhutan.
Yeah.
I presume, I don't know. I think they're still married. I don't know. I think they are. Looks like they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's awesome.
we went to the hot springs up in Banff. I think it was in Banff. Yeah, that was cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, you've got Richard Dunn and Arthur Bhutan have been on the podcast too. So those are ones
I'll have to check out. I'll check out those two actually. I hadn't clocked them.
Yeah, no, you're good. That's awesome. Well, good. Well, take us back to the mission. You could start MTC, or if you want to just start out in Scotland, carry on.
I found the MTC actually really quite hard. I know a lot of people speak about it really positively, but I was really active before I went into the MTC. So I was playing sport every day for hours and running, and I found the MTC very slow. I just kind of wanted to get out and get into the world again. It felt like it was like this little bubble away from the world, but yeah. And I suppose coming from the world of university as well, I'd literally the week before my mission got the Melchizedek priesthood and gone to the temple. It had all been quite rushed because I'd been away at university, so it was all a bit mind blowing at the time, and I was kind of just adapting in the MTC. Yeah. But I mean, I had a good time. My companion in the MTC, I remember we were listening to the talks, and he was too busy. He was writing his notes for for his talk, and I was like, you meant to listen to the other people talking. He's like, yeah, I know, but I want to be an apostle. I just remember thinking, okay, that's the world I'm now living in. That's quite a funny one. But anyway, I'll jump straight into the mission. So it's much better. I had a really good experience on my mission, and it was a good time. So I started out in Huntley. So got to the mission home and up to Huntley, which it probably didn't exist as an area when you guys went out. I think it closed shortly after I finished. It's a really, really small branch. There was a branch in Huntley and Macduff, it was called, on the north coast. So it's in Aberdeen State.
Mm-hmm.
And Huntley had 2 priesthood holders. Had Davy, I think his name was David McTavish, who was 99 years old. But his birthday, I still remember him saying it all the time. His birthday was on the 29th of February. He was born in a leap year. And so he'd tell everyone he was 25.
Wow.
So he was the eldest quorum president in Huntley. And then there was George and Jeannie. I can't remember their surnames, but it would see him around Huntley smoking away, and he's the only other man that turned up to church on a Sunday. He barely spoke. I couldn't ever understand a word he said. So it's 2 priesthood. So it was like from getting the Melchizedek priesthood to 4 weeks later, I was called on the branch presidency in Huntley, which was quite.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
And at the time, this would only ever happen in Scotland as well. There was no branch president. How can you be called as a second councillor to no one? I can never quite work that out. But they did in Huntley in Scotland, which was fun. And then, like, I remember lots of people remember Flora Piri. So there was no Relief Society present either. So literally the first week, we were praying about who to call as Relief Society president, which was really odd. It's two 19 and 20-year-old missionaries on the branch presidency praying about who the Relief Society president should be in the branch. We had a good time there. I thought about one funny story. We were teaching this girl called Joanne in Huntley, who had been introduced to us by Jeannie, and we went over for this DA, and it was like a really rundown part of the estate, and we got to her house, and this little kid was outside the door, and he went, "Fit like Fire's Fay," and I had no idea what he was talking about. This was the first few weeks in Aberdeen. I was like, "What?" He's like, "Fit like, big man." I was like, "I don't know what you're on about." So he's like, Fire's Fay, Fire's Fay. I was like, "I'm from England." He was asking me where you're from. But anyway, we went into Jeannie's house for this DA, and she'd cooked this huge meal, these roast potatoes. And Joanna, our investigator, was sat next to us. And she looked down at the potatoes, and there was like this huge, like, black curly hair in the potatoes. And so we all just like passed them along. And Jeannie was like, "You don't want any potato tatties or something," whatever she said tonight. And she's like trying to put them out on our plate. And we're like, no, we've had enough potatoes for the day. But Joanne ended up getting baptized, which was really good. We taught her for a while. And I think she was the first baptism in Huntley for years.
Who was your companion?
So I served with Elder Erickson, Trevor Erickson.
Okay.
He was my trainer. I think I was a disappointment. I wasn't quite American enough for him, I don't think. But we got along. We had a good time together. It was quite funny as well. I was really oblivious to kind of mission life. I hadn't spent so much time with the missionaries. And my first interviews with President Wilkinson said to me, "Elder Turvey, are you getting enough exercise?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm running like 4 times a week." And he was like, "You're getting Elder Erickson out running 4 times a week?" I was like, "Heck no, I go out running before he wakes up." He was like, "Elder Turvey, you really shouldn't be doing that." And I was completely oblivious. I was like, sorry, I really didn't know that I wasn't running on my own before my companion was awake. Yeah, so I got him out running a few times after that, not too many, but we tried to do a little bit before the mission pounds stacked on, which inevitably happens. And I remember the first time we went up to, because we covered 2 branches, we went up to Macduff branch, which was up on the coast. And it was always a beautiful drive up there, and you go along the waves. The sea was always really stormy. But I remember sitting in our first testimony meeting in Macduff branch, and the branch president of Macduff, I can't remember his name now, but they'd been up, the priesthood holders, they were all on the branch presidency because there was no one else. There was like 3 or 4 of them. And they'd gone off to this stake priesthood leadership meeting. And on the way back, his car had broken down. And he was telling the branch about how the car had broken down, and he'd given the car a blessing. And the car had worked and got them home. And I was like, "I'm not sure you can do that." But it worked for them. So that carried on. One funny story from Huntley time. So this was on. I then served with Elder James Perry, and we got along really well, James and I. I've seen him a few times. I think he lives in the States still now. I don't know if he did move back to Reading. He did live in the States. His wife's American, I know that. But we got given a brand new Corsa, which was like the dream. We had to drive all the way back to the mission home and pick it up. And it was this green, right out the box new. And we were doing this. We had a zone activity planned up at Peterhead Castle, I think it was. And it was like, we're going to do this like wide game, like tag game or something. And Elder Daleabout was the zone leader at the time. And a few of us had cars, so we'd like picked each other up and we're going out to Peterhead Castle. And the track to the castle is like really bumpy and uneven. And there was some huge puddles there. And I was like, I don't think we can drive through that. So Billy Daleabout was like, I'll be fine. So they had this like really old Corsa as the zone leaders, and they plowed through this huge flood. And it was all right. And we had this brand new Corsa, and I was like, I really don't feel comfortable doing this. And Elder Perry was like, no, we'll be fine. So I like floored it, went through this funny, and just heard this huge bang as like the bottom of the car hit a rock underneath. And I was like, no. And so we got through the flood, and then it's flooded water, and there was just oil leaking all out from the bottom of the car. And we were like, oh no, what are we going to do? We can't let President Vriens find out, because the mission president didn't know we're doing this own activity or something. I can't remember the scenario. But the car wouldn't start, wouldn't drive. And so we had to call the AA, which the mission had signed up to. We were all trying to be really sneaky about it. And amazingly, like, everyone from the zone chipped in to get this car fixed, with the goal that that President Wilkinson wouldn't find out. And anyway, like, we thought we got away with it, and the car was fixed, it all paid for. And about 3 weeks later, President Wilkinson rang us up and was like, why did you call the AA out for the car? And so I had to relay the whole story to him, and he was like, he wasn't cross, but it was just funny that he'd found out. And he was like, you really should have told me, Elder Turvey. I was like, I know. But that was quite
we heard about that. So I trained in Peterhead, and we went out to Slane's Castle all the time. And,
yeah, Slane's Castle, that was it.
We were told, park in the parking lot and walk out there, don't drive.
Especially if you've got a brand new Corsa.
So that was you. Now we know.
Yeah, that was me and Elder Perry. It would have been, I think it was Elder Perry by that time. Yeah, that was cool. It's a good time. And then, so my second area was air. I loved air so much. It was the summer of 2003. So I moved there in so I went out in September, moved there sort of March, April time, probably April by the time I got there. So I was there for 6 months of the summer. And it's a real special time in air. That was actually, there was 4 missionaries in air. So in Huntley, back to Huntley, we had a senior couple, even, and I can't remember the names, but they were from Kentucky. And it's so funny that he was called as branch president for a while, and he used to always say, what was he said? I can't remember what he said now. I've lost my train of thought. But really funny couple, and really good for us, because we were on the branch presidency. We would do the tithing over at their house every Sunday, and she cooked the most amazing biscuits and gravy. And I'd never had that. That was because it's obviously an American thing. I just loved those Sunday afternoons doing the tithing with them, and biscuits and gravy. That was good. So yeah, moved to air, summer of 2003. There was 4 missionaries there at the start. So I served with Elder David Richards. So I've seen a few times since my mission as well. Really hardworking guy. Probably not the greatest people skills at the time. I think he'd probably admit that as well. But we got along, and we worked hard together. And we had 4.5 months together as well. So it's good. And we were there at the same time as Elder Brown and Elder Lovelace as well. So we had some really good times there. And Elder Thomas mentioned Anne McConnell, I think, in his podcast of the week. So I think I must have followed him pretty soon afterwards, because Anne McConnell had just come back to church, and then we started teaching her sister Joyce and some of their family, and they all ended up. Probably, I don't know if they're active now. I don't think they are, because I actually went back to her a couple of years ago. I didn't see them, but the whole family ended up getting baptized, which was really cool. And then we also baptized a lady called Katrina, lovely old lady, just around the corner from the chapel. Katrina and Maureen. I was thinking about this the other day. So I baptized Maureen. Elder Richards baptized Katrina, and she was this probably about 70, really frail old lady. And Anyway, we baptized them, and she came out of the font, and I was like, "Oh, how do you feel?" She's like, "Oh, she'd really hurt her ribs when she was baptized." Anyway, we found out like a week later, she went to the doctors, and she'd actually broken her ribs being baptized.
Oh my gosh!
So it was kind of a joke after that Elder Richards had like slam dunked her into the water. I think he felt pretty bad, but that was quite funny. Yeah, we went on exchanges a lot in there. We had Nathan. Anyone who served in there will remember probably Nathan McLennan. He was 17 at the time. He was preparing to go on his mission. He was like the most spiritual kid ever. And then one of the other young men was Bobby Blaw's junior. So Bobby Blaw Senior was the mission president, and Bobby Blaw Junior was probably like 14 or 15. And I don't know how we got away with it, because I'm sure it probably isn't right looking back on it now. But we'd go on splits with these two teenagers all the time to try and double the workload. I remember one time we were teaching an Indian family. They were like the nicest people in the world. And we've been trying to get them to church for ages. And they invited us over for a DA. And I was so excited for this DA because they were proper Indian. And I love Indian food. Mm-hmm. And anyway, Elder Richards and I had a bit of a debate because we were on exchanges with Nathan and Bobby this night. And we were like, oh, who's going to go to this DA? And somehow both of us thought the other one was going.
Oh no!
So I was like, oh, I'll miss out, and he obviously thought he'd miss out, and then so neither of us turned up to this DA, and they'd cooked this like huge meal for us, and we felt so guilty afterwards. I was reminiscing about other fun experiences with Elder Richards. We had this tiny freezer in the flying air, and Elder Richards loved ice cream. he would always buy a tub of ice cream every week and eat this tub of ice cream. And this one week we went out shopping, and he got it back to the freezer. And he'd bought a big 2-litre tub of ice cream, and he couldn't fit it in the freezer. And he was like, what am I going to do, Elder Turvey? What am I going to do? I was like, I don't know, you're just going to have to eat it all. Not thinking he would actually do it. So he sat there.
He really did?
He really did. I went out into the other room, and anyway, I came back, and he was literally devouring this 2-litre tub of ice cream. And I was like, it almost finished. I was like, you do realize you could have like split it and put it in smaller containers. You didn't have to eat the whole thing. And then trying to get him out working after that was pretty challenging. But that was good.
Wow,
that was good. I was companions with Elder Mannon after that. Just trunked out Elder Mannon. Well, not quite trunked him out. I'm not saying he was drunky particularly, well, he was, but I think he was. Yeah, but he was up for a lot of fun. So he had 3 months left. He moved into air. So we were companions for just the 6 weeks. And yeah, well, he was pretty tricky to get him to do companionship study, but what he wanted to do was get fit to go home. And so my memory with Elder Mannon is basically we'd do beach runs every morning. So we'd run down to the beach in air and just have chats on the beach, kind of preparing for what we're going to do that day. And I had a really positive time with him. He's a really good guy. One of the memories that stands out is the four of us. So Elder Brown, Elder Lovelace, Elder Mannon, and I all went to Loch Doon. I think it was Loch Doon, and we went fishing for the day with the McConnell family. So it's when we were teaching them and a few other people from the ward. And we caught a few rainbow trout, and Elder Brown kind of got them ready, gutted them, and we had those. But we were stood on this jetty, and I obviously hadn't swam for the whole mission because you're not allowed to swim. And Elder Mannon pushed me into the water off this jetty. And I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? Because it was too deep to stand up in. I was like, am I allowed to swim? I like the thought went through my head, I'm not allowed to swim. Remember that thought went through my head. And he's like, what are you going to do, Elder Turvey? You're going to break the rules and swim back? That was a fun experience. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
So I loved it as well. We had really good time through that summer. Obviously, we had a lot of people to hang out with. So John O'Prey was preparing for his mission with Daniel Colborne as well. So they're both two of the lads in air that were prepping. And John O'Prey's older brother, I can't remember his name now, he was the mission president at the time. And Bishop McLennan was like really, really inspired to kind of get missionary work going in the ward. So the ward was so supportive of us in air. And so that brought a lot of success. So it was really good. So we started this football up on Saturdays. So we go and play football every week on a Saturday morning, which was really good. But I remember one night we had John O'Prey's older brother, I can't remember his name for the life of me. He took us out for all you can eat pizza at Pizza Hut, the four of us missionaries. And so we had this competition to see how much pizza we could eat. I think I ate like 20 slices of pizza, and then we had a DA with Bobby Bloor Senior right after it.
Oh no.
I just remember turning up at this DA feeling so, and funnily enough, it was the same night that the odd memory that the statue of Saddam Hussein was pulled down in Iraq.
Yeah.
Still remember, we were sat in his house, and I was feeling ill, so ill from all this pizza. I remember seeing on the TV the statue of Saddam Hussein coming down, and then this huge meal being put in front of me, and I was like, I just don't know how to do it. So not a pleasant memory, but I actually went to the bathroom, made myself sick so that I could eat some food. So I was like, I'm not going to be able to do anything without throwing up here.
Oh man,
quite awful, that one. But yeah, really, really blessed time in air. We taught. Really enjoyed. There was a less active teenager just around the corner. I can't remember her name, for the life of me, but Elder Mannon came up with the idea that we would go and teach her seminary every morning. She's quite rebellious. We'd see her around the estate smoking and stuff, but she was a member and hanging out with all the youths. But she was quite open to us going and teaching her seminary, which is quite amazing. So we had a really good deal going, because Mum would make us breakfast every morning, and we'd go and teach her daughter seminary, which was great. I remember a couple of weeks towards the end of my time there, we had like 18 DAs in a week. It's ridiculous to try. We'd have like breakfast appointments almost every day as well. Not that DAs are obviously the making of a mission, but they make a big difference.
It's
Needless to say, I left there
sweet spot for sure.
Heavier. Yeah, I left there about 2 stone heavier than I started there, which I think probably all of us did at the time, which was good. Then, so after Elder Man and I was moved out to Dundee. So I was in Liff Road in Dundee, and I trained. So I trained Sam Bergen at the time. Oh, yeah. He was probably he's probably still around when you two came out, probably just about.
Yeah.
So I trained Elder Bergen. We whitewashed Dundee. There were sisters there for the first 6 weeks. And then after, I think the mission in my first year, when I started, it was 180, and it dropped to about 120 in my first year. Which is obviously, it sounds simple, but they were reducing the number of missionaries in Scotland. So it sounds simple, but actually the logistics of that are really quite tricky, because it meant areas were closing, but then would reopen. And so it was all a bit chaotic. So they closed the sisters area. And so we whitewashed our area, then whitewashed the sisters areas all within 6 weeks.
Man.
And then in the second transfer there, Elder Turvey came and served with us as well. So I was in a threesome with 2 greenies, which is quite an interesting scenario.
Wow.
So I was training twice at the same time, which was good. And that, again, that's the nature of what had happened, because when I got to like a year out, there was no one else that had been a year out. Everyone was green, because they'd gone through that period of reducing the mission by so many people. So I remember that winter being ill. I was a bit ill for a week. I had tonsillitis and just really run down. And so by this time, President Vriens was out. And so I had a conversation with President Vriens. I'm like, I'm really ill. I can't go out and work. Should all 3 of us sit in the flat on our own? The house, we had the house just around the corner from Freddie. He's like, no. You go and tell your 2 greenies what to do. Send them off to work. It's kind of nice. For a week, I was just setting work for them to do, and streets for them to track. Chap on is the right phrase, isn't it?
Nice.
Yeah. So that was good. I remember the whitewashing in Dundee was really hard work, though. I remember like the first 2 weeks we just knocked doors for 70 hours straight, because Liff Road's not like Dundee Centre, so there's nowhere to GQ really. So we're just knocking doors all the time for 2 weeks straight. Didn't know anyone, didn't know anything. But pretty much we got to grips there pretty quickly. Some missionaries in the group might know the Petrie family. So the Petrie family were from Blairgowrie originally. There's an interesting story around that, because we sat in front of a map in the first week, and we're like, right, we don't know anyone, we don't know anything. Where should we go? Where should we go and teach? And Blairgowrie was an hour away on the bus from where we lived. And we went. So me and Elder Bergen were like, right, we feel good about this town. We know that no doors have been knocked there for years. There's no record of any doors ever been knocked in Blairgowrie. And so we were like, right, we'll catch the bus out there, and we will literally knock doors for 12 hours straight. Like, if you're going to be diligent like that, surely you'll get something out of it. And so the first week we went there, we knocked doors for 12 hours straight. We didn't teach a single person. It was raining. It was horrible. It was awful. And we both thought, right, well, that sucks. Blair Gary obviously wasn't inspired. We went home. And so we'd come up with this, as you do as missionaries, you come up with your list of roads you're going to knock on the doors of. And so we had this list. I think it was James Street was the next road on the list. And anyway, we went back and had our zone leader call us that night and asked us how our day had been. And we relayed the story. And he's like, well, that was a waste of time, wasn't it? Like, you've spent 2 hours on the bus, wasted loads of money and not taught anyone. Like, don't do that again, was pretty much what we were told. But I was like, and so a week went by again, and we'd planned to go out again a week later. And I was like, we still both felt really good about going out to Blair Gary, despite this all time. So we're like, we'll go again, and literally we will track doors for 12 hours straight and see if we can teach anyone again this time. And so we just carried on our list, and literally the first door we knocked on the second week was Jennifer Petrie, who was, so we started teaching the Petries. And so it was mum, husband was interested as well. We later kind of started teaching him, and I think they had 6 kids.
Wow.
And so we taught them for the whole time, and they didn't get baptized in my time in Dundee, but because they moved house to Inver Gordon or something, in the Gary, somewhere closer to Dundee. And then but a lot of the ward were kind of in on this. We got Blair Anderson was coming to teach them with us, and the Keoghs, I can't remember the Keogh dad.
Charlie?
Charlie Keogh would come and teach them with us. And so they kind of got quite integrated into the ward. But yeah, about a year later, they all got baptized, which was really cool.
That's cool.
I don't know if they started or not, but yeah, we had a good time. I remember the Christmas in Dundee. I sound like a real rebellious missionary. I don't think I was. I was actually really anal. But Pirates of the Caribbean came out while we were in Dundee. And I remember we talked to, I can't remember who his own leaders were at the time, but we were like, we'd asked President Vriens for permission to watch Pirates of the Caribbean at Christmas. And he'd said, elders, you do what you feel comfortable with. And he'd said it to the zone leaders as well. And President Clancy was the state president, and we had a DA on Christmas Day booked there. And so I talked to zone leaders, and I was like, oh, what are you going to do? You're going to watch Pirates of the Caribbean? And they're like, oh, no, we've prayed about it. We don't feel right. And so they kind of left me with that thought. And then we went over to President Clancy's house and watched Pirates of the Caribbean. And I remember the zone leaders being like, I can't believe you did it. They were like, I thought we'd decided we weren't going to watch it. I was like, you decided you weren't going to watch it. We were all in on that. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We had a good few people I remember in Dundee. I remember the Keogh as well. We went to their house quite a lot. There were a senior couple. It's not a senior couple, sorry. 2 sister missionaries in Dundee served with us. I cannot remember their names for the life of me. But we had, because the nature of them being senior missionaries, they would ask for blessings quite a lot, and we had permission from President Vriens to kind of go over to their house whenever they asked us to check in on them and help with anything they needed us. So it was always really nice. We kind of went around there for breakfast once a week for our district meetings and things like that, which was a lovely time. And then we taught a girl called Rosie, who was Bishop Campbell's daughter's friend. I can't think what her name was now, the daughter, but really enjoyed teaching Rosie. I don't know if she ever got baptized or not, but we would kind of go there once a week, and yeah, had a good time there. Sorry, I realize I'm waffling on about the areas. I don't know.
You're doing good.
I don't even know if anyone's interested in this, but it's fun.
Absolutely, they are. I'm sure they will be.
Yeah. So that was Dundee. A lot. I'm trying to. It's crazy, isn't it? Because you have these memories, and it's like it seems so fresh on the one hand, but seems so distant on the other. Like, I can't believe I've been home from mission nearly 20 years. It's hard to believe that. It seems like so many of the memories seem yesterday. We did do a zone blitz when I was in Dundee. We went out to St Andrews. It's obviously a big university town, and it was quite competitive. So the whole zone went there, and the idea was to see who could teach the most discussions in a day. Which I'm not that competitive, but it was always fun. And I remember being paired up with Levi Taylor, and we basically set ourselves a goal to GQ every single student we saw the whole day. We were there, and we had some really good conversations because there's a big theology department at St Andrews, so loads of the students are studying theology, and so they were quite willing and open to talking to us. And so we had some real deep conversations around like theology and existence, which mind opening. We actually I share that story because obviously Levi and I managed to win the competition, and we ended up teaching 10 discussions in one day, which was my mission record.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm not sure if it was as memorable for others, but funny the things you remember. Yeah, and then so I served with Elder Bergen and Elder Turvey. Elder Bergen left after 4.5 months, and so it's just Elder Turvey and I for one transfer, and then I was moved to Motherwell, where I was served as zone leader with Elder Larson. Can't remember Elder Larson's first name, but we were only together. He was from Salt Lake, I think. We were only together for the 6 weeks, and I think it seems like a bit of a blur, that 6 weeks to me, so I'm not quite sure what happened. But yeah, Motherwell was good. That's when I'm trying to think who was in the zone Motherwell at the time. So I served with Elder Larson and then Elder Dunn. Served with Elder Dunn for 3 months. And the bizarrest thing happened. This was when they were sort of reshuffling all the zones. So moved in. I was with Elder Larson for 6 weeks. Then I was with Elder Dunn, and they had this co-zone leader scenario going on. I think that stopped soon after us, but both companions were zone leaders. And then they closed Motherwell as a zone leader area. But I stayed in Motherwell and trained again. So I trained Paul Christensen.
Yeah,
which was really cool actually. So yeah, he was quite funny. One of the stories I remember with him, he was so green. I'm sorry, Paul, for saying that. He was so green when he came out. And we were, I cannot remember, but there was a girl in the ward who was turning 17 or 18, and she'd invited us to a party, her 18th party over at her house. So and quite a few members of the ward were going, so it wasn't just like random that we were turning up as missionaries. And we went to this party, and some of her friends were there drinking. Sat down and was chatting away, and Paul turned to me and went, "I feel really uncomfortable." I was like, "Why?" He's like, "I've never been at a party with alcohol at it before." Like, this kid's in his first week of his mission, and I've just taken him to his first party with alcohol at it. Awful.
You told him to get used to it. This is Scotland.
Yes. Yeah, this is Scotland. You no longer. He's from. I think he's a qualified doctor now, but he lived, I think it was South Utah, somewhere where it's literally like totally.
It's small town. Yep.
Yeah, totally Mormon. So I think it was quite eye opening for him coming to Motherwell. We taught a couple in Motherwell, Scott and Tracy, and we saw them pretty much the whole time we were there. I don't think they ever got baptized in the end. But oddest scenario, we were teaching them obviously about like don't smoke and the law of chastity and stuff. And at the end of the discussion, he was like, "Oh, we're gonna have to get married then, Trace." So we literally proposed to Tracy in front of us.
Oh my gosh!
Will you marry me so that we're like living this law of chastity? And so they ended up getting married, and he actually asked me to be his best man. So I managed to be someone's best man on my mission as well, which is quite cool.
Did you throw the bachelor party too?
No. That would have been an interesting one, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah. So I had to ask.
Yeah. But they only had it was a really small scale wedding in like a registry office.
Yeah.
I remember sorting out the flowers for them though. I remember going to get their flowers before the wedding day.
There you go.
That's pretty cool.
It was cool. It was, I mean, that was a real random experience. I missed one story that I wanted to share actually. This was in Ayr, I think. I can't remember who was my companion at the time, but we were tracting on, the old tenements, the tenement blocks. And this guy opened the door and he was so blatantly stoned out of his head. And so we're trying to talk to him about the gospel. And he's like, "Yeah, come on in. I think it must have been Elder Richards. So he sat there. His girlfriend was in the lounge, like doing whatever, and she ran out of the room when she came in. And so we started talking to him, and he was like being really spiritual and really open to the gospel and discussions and stuff. And we got to the end of the discussion, and he started telling us what he did for a living. And this guy was a William Wallace impersonator. So he would go to events and be William Wallace. And so he had his kilt. He started showing us this kilt and all the stuff he had. And he's like, "Do you want to see my sword?" And we were like, "Yeah, okay." Kind of just going along with the situation. Anyway, he pulls out this like 5 foot long sword. And at this point, I started to feel a bit uncomfortable with this guy that's clearly probably on drugs or alcohol or something in front of us, waving this 5 foot sword around. He was like, "Oh, I'll show you some of my moves." He's waving the sword around. And he swung it around and chopped his living room light off the roof. We were just sat there I was sat there wide-eyed, not knowing what to do about this situation. I was like, "Oh my goodness, we need to get out of here." So we left pretty swiftly and didn't go back there.
Oh my gosh.
But that was quite a funny experience in there.
Amazing.
I'm trying to think of any others.
I don't think anybody else has had an experience like that.
that was
Nope.
Yeah, the tenement blocks in Ayr were an interesting place to be. I mean, I didn't really ever serve. All of the areas I served in were not like the proper deprived areas, but that was probably the closest I got to the real deprivation. That interestingly I hadn't seen growing up in England. Even it's quite a contrast. I know it's probably even more of a contrast for people coming from like Utah, but even for me, I was like, these people live in real challenging situations, don't they? And
yeah, it's true.
It's really hard, some of them. So yeah, we in Motherwell we taught Craig and Andrea Mitchell. They got baptized. I think they're one of the only families that I taught and baptized on my mission that are actually still either active or semi-active. They ended up going to the temple and
awesome.
Steels,
That's really cool.
Which is cool. I still touch base with them sometimes. That was a real nice one because they actually got baptized after I left, finished my mission. But I was able, because I'm close by, well, relatively 4 hours away, was able to drive back up and then baptize Andrea about 2 months after I finished my mission, which is
cool.
A good experience.
Yeah.
Motherwell was a great place, though. Lots of really good experiences there. We did a lot of work with the McKee family. So they had the older sister had got married to a non-member, but he'd got baptized. So we spent a lot of time with them because he'd only been recently baptized. And then Gillian was dating or was engaged, I think, to a guy called Scott McCallum, who we'd spent quite a lot of time with him. And funny enough, he'd been kind of associated with missionaries for about a year, and they were playing football with him every week and kind of getting to know him. And I didn't ever. I think I might have taught him 1 or 2 discussions, but I just said, "Oh, has any missionary ever asked you if you wanted to be taught?" And he was like, "No, no one's ever asked me." So we started teaching them. We started teaching him, and we kind of did it all as a group. And he ended up getting baptized, and they're still active as well. Still see Gillian every now and then. So Gillian McCallum. Don't know about the older brother, but I've got funnily enough, I think it was I'm frustrated, I can't remember his name, but he bought me an England shirt when I left Motherwell. The older brother did, and I still got it. I've got a Rangers shirt that they bought for me and an England top. Don't know why a Scottish person bought an English missionary in England top. Thought that was a bit weird, but hey, England football top.
You didn't want to offend you, I'm sure.
Yeah, probably. And then after that, I mean, so for the last 6 weeks, I think 3 of us it was a real interesting scenario. So it was Elder Bhutan and I saw him after my mission. They were APs at the time. And I think because of the nature of the mission, where you had basically a whole mission was under a year out. So you had loads of companionships all over the mission that were like 4 and 6 months together at the same time. So like Paul Christensen, after I left Motherwell, served with someone who had been out even less time than him. So they were like 4.5 and 3 months. And I think we had 10 people scheduled for baptism when I left Motherwell.
Wow.
And so I was like, because we had Craig and Andrea, and then there was a family around the corner that were friends with them, both scheduled for baptism as well. So there's like 2 families all scheduled for baptism. I remember Paul saying to me when I left, he's like, how do I get people to the baptism stage? Like, a lot of missionaries didn't know how to do that because it just wasn't something they'd experienced.
Yeah.
And I was, so it was Elder Newcomb and I and someone else were called to be traveling missionaries. And the idea was that we were going around trying to train the younger missionaries how to get people to get to the baptism stage, presumably was the goal of it. But it was hard. That was a really hard 5 weeks, I found, because we were on our own, so we would travel on the bus on our own to new areas each week. And the trouble is you'd pick areas where people weren't teaching a lot, and I'd get there and they wouldn't have anything scheduled for the whole week, and so you basically weren't. I wasn't showing people how to get people to baptism. I was just doing finding with people for 5 weeks straight. I ended up going back to Motherwell quite a lot, spending quite a lot of time with Christensen and his new companion to teach the families that were there. Yeah, but it was a good time. It was good. It was fine. It's hard that last 5 weeks because it's just out of routine, aren't you? And you're on the verge of going home yourself as well. It's difficult.
You mean you were trunky?
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, probably. I think everyone gets that a bit, don't they?
Yeah. Just at that point, you're like, I'm done.
I knew I was going to university like 5 weeks away. Your head kind of gets into that. I'd also, at the time, funny enough, I managed to get myself Dear John on my mission, and then managed to get a new girlfriend at home somehow.
What?
Another girl was waiting for me to come home, so that was obviously on your mind quite a lot.
Wow.
That didn't work out.
Man,
those things happen, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, the girl, it's really funny because I'd been dating this girl when I went on my mission, a member, for about 5 months probably. And she knew I was going on a mission. It was just fun and open. And so she'd said when I went, "Oh, is it okay if I date other guys?" I was like, "Of course, you do what you want to do." So she ended up dating one of my best friends. And when that happens, you kind of rule them out, don't you? You kind of think, right, that's it. You've dated one of my best friends. We're going to move on now. And so I moved on and started writing to this other girl. Came back from a mission, and she literally turned up at my door and was like, "Can we go out again?" I was like, "Well, I've kind of moved on mentally now." So,
oh boy, goodness.
The life of missionaries. Drama of being 19 or to 21 again.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's hard, isn't it?
It is, definitely. Well, do you have any specific memories or good times that you spent with the Wilkinsons or with the Vriens that come to your mind, Joel?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know Elder Wilkinson that well because I've been straight up to Huntley.
You were banished.
A long way away. I was put out on the sticks.
Yeah.
And so Elder Wilkinson went home when I was about 8 months out, I think. So I didn't get to know him that well. But I suppose, yeah, President Vriens, I was probably one of the more senior missionaries when he started the mission because of the scenario that had unfolded. And so I had a lot of long conversations with Bill about kind of getting, because he was obviously getting used to being on a mission as well, and it was a new thing for them. I do remember him getting caught speeding numerous times, if I remember rightly. And he had to go. He didn't want to. Did he take his English driving license and fail it, or did he not want to do it because he thought he would fail? I can't remember the scenario, but I think he wanted to get an English license, but he didn't think he either failed or he didn't think he'd pass, and so he went home so that he could get another year on his license rather than taking the English test or something along those lines.
I'm pretty sure he did the latter, where he'd gone home he went home for medical reasons and different things just to get a new stamp on his passport so he could carry on. Yeah,
so he could carry on driving without sitting his English license. Trying to think of anything in particular. I can't think of anything in particular, but I learned a lot. I do remember having a conversation with him actually, because obviously they had a lot of children, and I growing up as one of quite a few as well. I kind of always thought I wouldn't have too many, so I always thought I'd only have 2 children, because I was like, I don't know if I could love. I think, does he have 7 kids? 7? I think he has 7.
Right. Yeah, it's got to be pretty close. I don't know.
I remember saying to him, like, how did you have enough love for 7 kids? And he just said, just your capacity to love grows the more kids you have. And I think that was quite inspirational, I suppose. It's a good conversation, because I probably wouldn't have had 4 had I not had that conversation with him.
Wow.
And also, I suppose, talking to him about university, obviously there's a few that's one conversation that's had a huge impact on my life, because I've ended up having more children as a result of it. And the other one was I've now spent 16 years teaching in primary schools, because President Vriens decided I should be a teacher for whatever reason. And so
yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean that's a great thing, and sometimes I begrudge him that as well. I'm like, why? Surely working with boats would have been way more straightforward than working with dysregulated 5 and 6 years old 6-year-olds every day. But yeah, it's all your fault, President Vriens. Never watch this. So I get 6 weeks. It's the summer holidays now, so thanks to President Vriens, I've also got 6 weeks off work, which you don't get in many jobs, do you?
Pretty sweet.
No, how long do they get off at summer in States? I've never actually looked into that.
Let's see. We schools, it just depends on where you're at.
Yeah, we got done first week of June, and then go back the second to last week of August.
Oh, so they got a long time.
Yeah, it's a little bit longer. Yeah.
There you go. Everyone should be a teacher in the States. Get long holidays.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can't speak for myself, but I mean, for those who
if
enjoy
you're a teacher here, you can't afford to do anything on those holidays.
No, yeah, probably true. Yeah.
So, Joel, what was your experience in transitioning to preach my gospel? Because that would have been, I don't know, maybe halfway.
Yeah, that was interesting question you should ask. I actually remember literally. When I first started, we had to memorize the discussions. So we had all this scripture mastery and memorization program. And I think I passed off the 6th discussion the week they introduced this idea of preach my gospel. So I've literally just memorized this discussion, and now I don't even need to know it anymore. It was interesting because I think as a mission, we actually trialed it, didn't we? I think Scotland trialed it for the year.
We got a couple paper copies of a couple chapters or something beforehand.
So I think I had one of the first copies before it was like a formal thing. I remember I can remember the street. I can remember where I was walking the day we were talking about preaching my gospel, the day it kind of first came out. I can't remember what area I was in now, but it was a sunny day and there was a nice stream. It's funny how you put location to memories, isn't it?
Yeah.
And
sunny day had to have been Dundee, probably.
I was in Dundee in the winter.
Oh, were you? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there were sunny days in the winter too down there.
I remember being snowed in Huntley for like 3 or 4 weeks. We couldn't get out in the car at all.
Oh my gosh.
Huntley had this so many times where the missionaries couldn't get out. It must have been the most tracted town in Scotland, because it was probably a similar size to the town I live in now. It's probably 30,000 people. You could probably track the whole town in a week. Yeah. I think the missionaries before me attracted the whole of Huntley, and I attracted the whole of Huntley. Like, just because you'd get stuck there and you couldn't do anything else. So
yeah. Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah. So preach my gospel. I mean, I found it interesting because there's this whole it's often the way in the church, isn't it, that they introduce new things, but the most people that are living in line with how they feel and how the vibe's going are doing that anyway. So I mean, I knew the discussions by heart, but I didn't teach them that way even before Preach My Gospel and this idea of teaching by the Spirit came out. Obviously, missionaries for years have been trying to teach by the Spirit. Just because you memorize the discussions didn't mean it wasn't happening.
Yeah.
So I still think that the basis of it was quite similar, wasn't it? Preach My Gospel, and
the doctrine didn't change.
No, the doctrine didn't change. I mean, I still remember the paper copy of the commitment pattern. I don't know if you had ever seen that. So we had to memorize. It was literally the first memorization. I think even before the discussions, you had to memorize the commitment pattern, which was basically like resolve their concerns, build relationships of trust. I remember being the first one on it. Build relationships of trust.
Yeah.
Ask direct questions.
I've used that in job interviews.
Yeah, absolutely. I have as well. I do remember one of our zone leaders setting the goal to commit 2 people to baptism every single day. And I remember thinking, that's a ridiculous goal. Like, I'm not going to meet 2 people that are ready to be asked to be baptized every single day. And they were like, no, you've got to ask 2 people to be baptized every single day. And I was like, I'm not going to do it. And they would try and use the commitment pattern on me. They're like, I sense you have a concern about this. And I was like, I do. Yeah, I have a real big concern about it because I don't think it's the right thing to be doing. We shouldn't be asking 2 people to be baptized every day if they're not ready for baptism. So this went on for a whole 6 weeks. They were asking me if we'd done our 2 commitments every day. And I was like, no, we haven't asked anyone. For 6 weeks. It was a righteous goal, I'm sure. Righteous goal with good intentions. But
yeah. Absolutely.
Maybe not the right thing to do. I don't know. Maybe it was. Maybe if I'd asked more people to be baptized, I would have baptized more people. I'm not so sure.
Yeah, you never know, right?
Yeah, you never know.
It's all good.
You never know. But during that final 5 weeks, I got to go to quite a few areas. I remember. This is a funny story. We were in Johnstone. It was the flat in Johnstone. I'm sure it was. And they hadn't gone in the loft. There was a loft bedroom. And they hadn't gone in there for weeks. And I was like, why haven't you gone in there for weeks? And they were like, there's a wasp nest in there.
Yes, there was.
Yes.
I can attest to it. I lived there for 6 weeks.
There. So you knew the wasp nest.
Yeah.
Was he still there?
Oh, yeah, it was still there. I mean, that was in the fall of 2005. I mean,
okay.
It was
there.
It was never resolved.
It was there in September. This must have been August 2004. And I was like, okay, so let's sort this wasp nest out. So we rang around and got some quotes to get rid of the wasp nest. And it was like 300 quid. And I was like, oh, that's ridiculous. We can't pay 300 quid to get rid of this wasp nest. I'll go and get rid of it. So I remember they had like a, little Henry vacuum cleaners or something. I was like, I'll go in and I'll vacuum the wasps out of the wasp nest, thinking this was a really good idea. So shut the door in the loft with this wasp nest in there, and I was like, I just shoved the hose of the vacuum cleaner through the wasp nest. Yeah. With it on to try and hoover all the wasps up, and the wasps were like flying into it. I managed to get loads of them in there. And then like I kind of suddenly looked around and there was like hundreds of wasps around me as well. And I was like, no, what am I gonna do now? So I like started trying to hoover the wasps up around the room. And decided eventually that I was probably fighting a losing battle. So like turned the vacuum off and ran out of the room and shut the door behind me. I think I got stung about 12 times.
Oh my gosh.
By wasps. So I clearly didn't resolve the wasp nest problem at Johnstone Flat.
No. We've laughed quite a few times through this podcast of how many instances us missionaries didn't call the office and say, can you please call the landlord and resolve X issue that's going on in this flat, because whether it was a mold issue or whether it, was horrible furniture or wasp nests, or, I mean, we've all experienced something just totally minging to the point where we're just like, why on earth are we still living in this place?
At Huntley, I don't think I ever had a bed.
Serious?
I think I was 6 weeks sleeping on a mattress on the floor.
Oh my god!
I look back on it now and I'm like, what was I thinking? Why didn't I just get a bed or ask someone for a bed?
Right, exactly.
But when you're like 19, you've never had to think about these things yourself, have you?
No, you haven't.
My mum and dad had just always bought a bed for me, and I had a bed in my bedroom. And then suddenly you get to a flat without a bed, and I'm like, oh, there's no bed here. I guess I'll just sleep on the floor for six months.
Yep.
6 months. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I know. I mean, the logic behind we need to spend more time out preaching the gospel as opposed to resolving what's going on our living quarters. Like, nobody thought about that beyond like, hey, we should fix this. All right, we got an appointment.
No one ever came into your flat to question it either.
No.
Like, I know the zone leaders were meant to do flat inspections, I think, but I don't recall ever having a flat inspection by a zone leader or ever doing one as a zone leader. So
No, I don't remember that either. Maybe even district leaders were supposed to, but it never happened.
I did have some inspections from senior couples in my last area, and they ended up getting rid of our flat. So that tells you how well it went.
Yeah. That did happen.
Oh boy. Well, Joel, we've enjoyed our conversation today. Is there any other of your fellow missionaries that you haven't heard from? I mean, you've got some catching up to do, but others that you'd like us to track down that we can get on the podcast in the future?
Yeah, like I said, I probably missed some of the people you've done, but I mean, yeah. Has Elder Lovelace and Elder Brown done one?
Elder Brown has been approached, but he's a little bit hesitant right now.
Yeah. I tell you, I was quite leaning up to it. You think there's an element of me that thinks, oh, no one will be interested in hearing my experiences, and then there's an element of you thinks maybe it's not right for me to do it now because I'm a different person than I was then. But it's good to just recall memories, isn't it? And the positive experience you have. So yeah, it'd be cool to hear from Elder Lovelace and Elder Brown.
I'll reach out to him again for sure.
I know that lots of people's paths go in different directions, don't they? And but we still have that, whether you're in the church or out of the church, you still have those memories that kind of unite us all.
It's a shared life experience.
Yeah.
That's right. I mean, I didn't know you on the mission, but you went home in September, and there's a 3-month period until I got to the mission, and I heard stories about Elder Turvey. You know,
that's cool. That's good. You leave a mark, don't you, wherever you go?
Yeah, absolutely.
You do leave a mark. I mean, Elder Perry. I need to catch up. I'd like to catch up with Elder Perry. We got along really well.
Okay.
James Perry. He's I believe last thing I knew, I when I was in the States, I caught up with him, spent some time with him over there, and he married an American girl, but I think they moved back to Reading in the UK in the end.
Oh wow, okay.
So he's probably based in the UK again.
Yeah.
But Elder, who else? Draco Cardos, has he been on? He's
one that we have reached out to. I guess he's got young kids, and so he's not quite ready for that. But we'll keep bugging him.
Yeah, keep going with him. I've seen him a few times since we got back because he lives only about an hour away.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. Well, and the other thing that we love too is, as this is published, share it, tag people, and we love referrals. So anybody that you can kind of send our way, they could go to our website, the51spila.com, and fill out a contact sheet, or we'll find them on Facebook or some other social media platform and track them down.
That'd be cool. Yeah, if anyone is visiting the UK as well, get in touch.
Yeah,
there you go.
It's a beautiful area where I live. Not that it's Scotland. Maybe not as beautiful. It's beautiful as Scotland. It's different to Scotland, but
it's still the UK. It's probably just as wonderful and has all the magic that the UK provides for us Americans who drive through the desert all day most times.
Yeah, so. It's a very, very contrasting, very green where I live.
That's right.
Green and hilly.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Joel, we love you. Thank you again for taking time with us. It was great.
To touch base with you, and all the best. I think what you do is really good. I think it's good to reminisce.
Yeah, thank you.
Bring people together and connect again. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, like you said, it's been 20 years for many of us, and it's coming up for some of us. So, it's always good to remember. But you're our brother in Scotland, and we love you for being just that. So, thank you again for your time tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for doing it.
All right, brother. We'll say cheerio to you.
Yeah. See you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.